Randy did a phenomenal, and I'm going to pull this up here, and this is in the link. I put this in this links and info. Randy did a whole webinar on concurrency, which is awesome, right? He did it a couple years ago. I'm just lightly going to touch on this lightly, but this is a phenomenal, phenomenal webinar on understanding concurrency and locking and blocking and things like that. 100%, right? So I do want to point that out. I would highly recommend it's on our, if you just go up to YouTube and search for SQL Solutions Group, that's where it's at. Okay. I want to wrap up with just understanding the version store. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do, right? So two things I want to do, right? So I'm going to open a new query window here. I don't want to execute. All right. So this is one of the biggest things we run into all the time is no lock, right? We need to understand how this affects TempDB, okay? So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do it with no lock, with read committed snapshot oscillation off, then to do it again with it on, okay? So I'm going to use Stack Overflow database, and I'm going to turn read committed snapshot oscillation off, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this query, right? And all it does is I've got that one record, and I'm just going to say, hey, update my location where display name equals my name, right? Okay. And then I'm going to actually take this, okay, paste it over here. So I run this. So let me run this. Run that. Right. So it's a begin trend. Notice I haven't done a commit or a rollback, right? So while that's running, I'm going to go over here and run this. Okay. Now, if I had the sound effects of bird chirping, I would be playing that because we would be sitting here forever. Okay. So we understand blocking is a really bad problem. And this is a common scenario you're looking at, right? Where, a lock is taken out, right? We basically open a transaction, created a lock on this. And, the application or the user will go do something else, right? And not commit that. Well, that's blocking of holding everybody up. That's holding all the other transactions up, right? And in Randy's webinar, readers, writers block readers and all that kind of stuff, right? And I will get into that in a second, right? But this is the issue, right? We're talking version store, right? We could be waiting here forever for this to finish and roll back, right? Well, the way that we see people solve this is we're just going to go back over here and copy this paste over here. We see this all the time, right? We need to stop this. Okay. All right. Now let's run this. Okay. Hawaii. All right. Did that finish? Oh, you know what? That should say, I think I messed this up. That should still say, looks like, I should still say, Grand Junction. That should, right? I might have completed that, or I think I stopped it. Anyway, right? Let's see. So the problem we have is that, let's roll this back. Sorry, roll this back. Okay. If we run this back, we'll run this again. Still says Grand Junction, right? So, yeah, that's fine. It worked the way I wanted, right? So this was temporary, right? So, and this query, when it ran and got Hawaii, sorry, yeah, I messed up. So let me back up, right? This said, when we first ran this with a no lock, it said Hawaii, right? But that was not true, right? This query got results that were not accurate, right? Because until this completes, right? This is the true state. This is the true location, right? But in order to get around that, I had to go do a no lock, right? So the issue we have is that this query here got incorrect data, okay? And the true record of statement isn't this, until you either commit or roll back. Okay, right? That's the issue, right? So let's try this again. Let's do this with recommitted snapshot isolation on, right? So in order to do that, when I need to close this, because in order to turn it on, you've got to be the only active connection. So I should have no other connections in there. So I'm going to turn this on. Boom. All right. Let's do this again. So I'm going to open a new query window. Bam. I'm going to copy this over there. Sweet. Okay. So let me run this. Right. So I'm opening a transaction. Okay. I haven't committed to a transaction. Before, when we did this, I ran this, it said Hawaii when it wasn't true. Right. Right. But now, the question would be, what should this say? Okay. This should not come back. One, when we first ran it, it hung, right, until we did with no lock, right? But then when we did with no lock, it actually came back with the wrong data because this had not committed yet, right? So let's run this. Boom. Two things, right? That's accurate. This is the way read committed. This is the way RCSI works, right? So what we're seeing here is two very important things, right? The way RCSI works is that this query has not committed yet until the query on the right, the query on commits, right? The way RCSI works is it's basically keeping a version of the row, of the original row of all the rows in somewhere, right? And that's somewhere for RCSI and for row versioning is in TempDB, okay? So this is actually accurate, right? So it basically went and said, all right, we're going to go back into the version store because this has not committed. We're going to go into the row store and get the true record of value, which is Grand Junction, Colorado, okay? This is the way RCSI, and you notice two things. One, it came back really quick, didn't have to do no lock. And two, it actually brought back the correct value because this is not committed. So if we were to come back here and say either commit or roll back, we'll do commit. Oops, spelled that wrong. Commit. Okay, that's committed. Now when we run this should say Hawaii. Boom. Okay. Now that is the true record of value. Okay. Now, what I want to wrap up with, so real quick, without RCSI, without read committed snapshot isolation, readers block writers, writers block readers, and writers block writers, right? That's known. And that Grady goes into that very detailed in his webinar. Again, I'm going to highly recommend you read that, right? With RCSI, with read committed snapshot isolation, right? Writers no longer block readers, readers no longer block writers. However, writers can still block other writers, right? But as you saw, my writer did not block that reader, okay? So this is, it's interesting. Oracle has this on by default. There's no one has this on by default. Microsoft needs to get with it and turn this on by default, right? This would solve a whole lot of problems, right? But it's not on by default. So recommended, turn this on by default, okay? Now, what I want to wrap up with really super quick, right, is that here is a I'm just gonna do this, right? You can see how much space the version store is using in TempDB, or how much your databases are using in the version store, right? So if we just say select DB name, right, we can see I'm using very little. Yeah, like none of it. As you see, database ID. All right, that's 2013, right? But if I do, I don't know what's coming. DBA-DB, it should be coming with. Anyway, let's see. All right, so let's. I'll just wrap up. Let's try this. So I'm going to run this, which basically doesn't do anything. It's basically setting all the the reputation column and the user's database to itself, right? So I'm going to run that, right? This should take a little bit, right? But this DMV, DMTran version store space usage, this is a great way to go, all right, how much of the version of the version store MTB are my databases using? Okay. Let me run this again. This might not change. Oh yeah. So now you see, hey, my Stack Overflow database is using that much, right? So let's do this again. I'm going to update DBO users, set that's a set location equal to location. Go. All right, so let's do that. Right. So you saw it was like 495 meg. This should now, if we were to run this again, boom, we should see that increase, right? So now it's now 529. So it went up a little bit, right? So here's the issue, right? So if we were to say select count from users, what we want to know is, in this scenario, where is SQL Server pulling this data from, right? Because it had to load all this data into TempDB, okay? So if I do select count from users, right, it doesn't matter. This data is not pulling it from the database, from the Stack Overflow 2013 database. It's actually pulling it from TempDB, okay? Right? Now, if we were to go and we already committed to our transaction, what I want to do, let me just wrap up by saying, when you've got, like we showed, you got a transaction, and it's open, you commit it and things like that. If we were to run this again, you would see this number not change. And that's because SQL Server will clean it out. We'll clean out the row version store. We'll call it at its leisure, right? Because there may be things that are still running. It's just not going to, when you kind of commit, it's not going to go and just empty everything out immediately. It's going to be smart about it. So, if you were to say, hey, I've got, 595 meg of version store, but I've committed my stuff and it's not shrinking, it will over time. It'll clean it out over time. Just be patient, but it's going to do it when SQL Server determines, hey, everything's cool. I will clean it out. Okay.